So then in 2023, you stepped down as chairman of Roivant to focus on becoming president.
Yeah. So it was a series of steps I took. So I think it was in, let me get the years right, maybe January 2021 that I stepped down as CEO of Roivant. I remained chairman of the board, but I stepped down as CEO in January of 2021. And there were a lot of reasons why, but my interests moved beyond just business to figuring out this merger of business and politics. And I hated it. I think it was disgusting that politics was starting to infest businesses. And so I wrote a book about it. I wrote a book called Woke Inc. It was the first book that I wrote. It's the first of 3 books that I've written, and I have a 4th one coming out this year. But Woke Inc. was the first book. But I stepped down as my job as a biotech CEO to write it. So what we said from then forward, the new CEO, Matt Glein, who's the CEO today, he's the voice of the company. I'm on the board. I'm chairman. But he's the voice of the company, and my voice I'm going to be speaking in my capacity as a citizen. So I write a couple of books. I start another company called Strive. We can talk about that one, to compete directly against BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard as an asset manager that says, hey, we don't push companies to adopt environmental or social agendas. No, our goal as an asset manager is to maximize value, to maximize profit for clients. And I could tell you a lot about how that works through proxy voting and shareholder voting. Founded that company. But when we saw that red wave that never came in 2022, I saw a Republican Party that I felt needed to define itself and a country that needed to rediscover itself. I stepped down from my corporate positions, including my position on the board of Roivant, to run for president in, February of 2023 when we embarked on that journey. So that's a lot happened in those few years, but that's the really, really, really short version of what led me to the doorstep of running for president.
Well, by the time you're running for president, you are now a billionaire. Is that accurate?
Yeah, about a billion plus or minus. You probably even have better updates than I do. I don't check it on a daily basis. But, the company, people add up my public, different holdings and whatever. And so right around there, you could say. Yeah.
Drake, in 2012, had tweeted, the first million is the hardest.
The first million is the hardest.
The first million is the hardest.
He said the first million.
Million, yeah. The first million is the hardest. And then billionaire T. Boone Pickens responded to his tweet and said, the first billion is a hell of a lot harder.
Well, let me think about this. Let me see if that's accurate for me. Yeah, I think that is accurate, actually. I think the first million was the hardest. That was definitely true, if you're counting in that category. Getting to a billion was definitely a lot harder. And I haven't gotten to multiple billions, but if I did, I hope it's true that the first billion was the hardest too. We'll find out. I'll let you know in a few years.
I mean, what is different? What is the main difference in your life? Yeah. I mean, because I do okay for myself. I'm a multimillionaire, but I'm nowhere near a billionaire. What is the biggest difference between being a billionaire and a millionaire?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot. And I think it's one of the things, if you look at it as a parent, it adds a lot more to the list, actually. I think if you're looking at it as a parent, I think that I would say that there's some pros and cons, to be honest with you. But just from a personal perspective, pragmatically, it's, something that I would have never imagined doing, but opens up time for me is I don't travel on commercial planes because I get from place to place, and that's something that I never imagined doing, but I own a jet. It allows me to compress time, spend more time with my family, and to do the kinds of things that I otherwise would have been doing. We would have never imagined that. Now, is that a luxury? In some sense, it's a luxury, but for me, it's about just getting more out of the time that we're given and having more impact. The flip side is we don't have a second home. My wife is ideologically opposed to a second home for many reasons. One of them is also you feel like you're a prisoner to only go to one place, and that's not necessarily something that interests us. I should take it back. We have not the second home that you think of, but we have a small home near where my parents live in Cincinnati, Ohio, plus our main home in Columbus, Ohio. But we don't have some sort of glamorous, vacation house. I think many people come to our house and we live very comfortably, and we're really grateful for it. But I had one reporter come during the presidential campaign, and it was really funny. He's one of these people. He didn't really have a social filter, but he walks in. He was like, "Oh, I was expecting a much bigger house than this. You live in like a normal house. It's a nice house, but it's a normal house." My wife was cracking up. She's like, "I love our house." I don't know what he's talking about, but I think that, those can be differences. Like one thing is what are the things that you accumulate? And for people who value things or material comfort, yeah, there's no limit to the material comfort you can purchase for yourself. And a billionaire versus a millionaire can buy a lot of more material comfort for themselves. One of the things I found in all the people I know, and I know a lot of billionaires too, is it does not really correlate with happiness, right? I think in some ways it's the same game you're playing all the way. Because if you're a billionaire, guess what? There's something you can do at $10 billion that you can't do at $1 billion, right? The size of the yacht that you might have, the number of jets you might have. Does it actually support international travel, or does it have to refuel to get there? I know it sounds ridiculous, but like these are pressing questions on the minds of, my plane can't travel straight to Italy. Oh man, I can only travel across the United States. Well, there's a whole different, and it's one thing you realize is at every doorstep, there's always some other horizon that comes up, and you realize that's a little bit of a false treadmill. But one of the things it does buy you, or can buy you, is autonomy, right? I'm not going to be worried about being fired from a job because I don't work for somebody else, and I haven't for a very long time. And one of the things that I value is my freedom to say what I believe. Now, the irony is you have many billionaires who might be having the jet that I don't have that could travel from New York City to Bangkok, Thailand nonstop, as mine can't. Who cares? Who themselves actually feel really constrained in what they can or cannot say. And so I think the thing that it can buy you is a sense of freedom. A freedom from other people telling you what you can or cannot believe or cannot express. But the irony is I found a lot of people don't avail themselves of that freedom. And so you ask, in some ways, to bring it full circle, what is most different? For me, it's like one practical thing, right? It's the ability to get to places, achieve things in the world in person, and still maximize time with my family. Great. That's probably one thing on the list that I wouldn't have done had I not achieved, call it $500 million plus. Put yourself in the territory then of being able to travel through private aviation. Fine. That's great. For me, that's a convenience. It's something I'm grateful for and allows me to do things. But the rest of the comforts or the added comforts of having extra homes, we don't own luxury second homes, we don't own boats. For me, that I think comes with headache. It's one more thing to think about maintaining. It's one more thing to think about, if I'm not spending my time doing that, am I not utilizing what I bought? Versus the same questions that occur to everybody, no matter how much money they have. How do I live a life of purpose? How do I actually do something that's worthwhile in the short time that we're given? Those are the deep philosophical questions. The same insecurities come up too. Well, how am I competitive against other people that are in my domain, and am I doing as good of a job as my competitors? Be that in business, be that in the realm of politics. And so I think that it's the same, maybe it's not surprising, but it's the same deeper purposes that we seek to fulfill, and the same kinds of shallow insecurities that's different whether or not you're a millionaire or whether or not you're a billionaire. And I've been in every one of those categories, right? Middle class, millionaire, could only imagine it, to becoming a millionaire, to a multimillionaire, to now becoming a, near billionaire at the level of at least my first billion. It's it's funny. It's a lot changes and a lot doesn't change too.